and we'll carry on in Ruth chapter 3.
One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are the guardian redeemer of our family." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of your family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here till morning." So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized, and he said, "No one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor." He also said, "Bring me the shawl you're wearing and hold it out." When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today."
Okay, so as I mentioned, and as we read together in chapter 2, there is a wonderful relationship developing now between Ruth and Boaz. At the end of chapter 2, Ruth and by extension Naomi have been wonderfully and generously provided for. They've had plenty to eat, they've got plenty to spare, but their problems are far from over. It's not hard to see how these resources, wonderful though they are, can only take them so far. If Boaz is to be the true savior of this story, then Ruth needs not just resources from him, but relationship with him. That is how she will be saved. It's the same for us and God, by the way. God has lavished us with kindness. He's blessed us with a million good things. Our cupboards are overflowing with the grace of God. And we thought about that this morning together, didn't we? The many physical blessings we have. We live in a world that he created. We live on resources that he has blessed us with. And God has been kind to all people, whether they love him or not. God causes the sun to rise on the saved and the unsaved. God put blood in your body and a breath in your lungs. If you have money, he gave you that money. If you have a job, he gave you that job. If you have a roof over your head, he gave you the roof over your head and the food in your cupboard. All good gifts were given by him. But, and here's the big problem, those resources, wonderful though they are, can only take you so far. There is a use-by date on every single one of them. They will all eventually perish. And the truth is, ultimately, like Ruth, you need more than just resources from God if you are to survive. You need relationship with God. That is the only thing that will bring you true and lasting life. Now, Naomi, she grew up in Israel, so she knows the culture. She knows that Boaz is distantly related to their family through the deceased husband and sons. And because of that fact, Boaz, or someone like him, ought to legally take responsibility for these dear widows because of their vulnerability. This idea has its roots way back in the promise that God gave to Abraham. We won't get into the weeds of it now, but essentially it was designed so that no branch of the family tree would ever have to be cut off. The inheritance could continue, and the name of the family could continue all the way through the Old Testament story. So, to be clear, I'm not arguing for that style of marriage arrangement. I'm just saying that is how it worked in Ruth and Naomi's day. Naomi, who of course is an Israelite, she knows these things. She tells Ruth and says to her, in effect, look, Boaz, brilliant Boaz, whose field you have been gleaning from, he's connected to our family in such a way that he has an obligation to look after us, to make sure Elimelech's name is not wiped off the face of the planet. So Naomi proposes a plan that Ruth should meet Boaz down on the threshing room floor. When the harvest has been gathered, when he's not got work on his mind, when he's rejoicing in the goodness of God at the end of the season. And Ruth has got to make it clear that she would marry Boaz if only he would pluck up the courage to ask her. Now, a little bit of kind of cultural heavy lifting just for a moment, but bear with me. In Ruth's day, they had this strange custom where if you wanted to propose marriage to someone, you would drape the corner of your garment around them, which sounds very bizarre to us. But in some ways, it's no stranger than giving somebody an engagement ring. It is a visible sign of an invisible promise. It is a commitment to that particular person. And so, try and get this. Ruth engineers a situation here on the threshing room floor where she's able to say, verse 9, spread the corner of your garment over me. And the brilliant thing about this is the double meaning of those words. If Boaz doesn't want to marry her, after all, she is a dirty Moabite woman, right? If he doesn't want her, he can pretend they're just talking about blankets and they can all save face. It's the middle of the night. It's not an unreasonable request. Can you share that blanket with me? But if marriage is on his mind, he will have just heard the magic words from Ruth. You see how clever that is? You see how she couldn't have accomplished that at any other time of the day? In the middle of the day, in the sweltering heat? Like, share the corner of your garment with me. It doesn't make any sense at all. But here it fits perfectly. So from verse 8, in the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned and there was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I'm your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family. Which means either I'm freezing, Boaz, can't you keep me warm? Or I love you, Boaz, won't you propose to me? Let me close with this section with a reading from Ezekiel 16. See how this mirrors God's love for his people. Here, God uses metaphorical language, and he imagines Israel, his people, you and I would be included in this image, I think, of his people, as though she were a girl kind of discarded by her parents, kind of chucked on the side of the road to live alone, abandoned at birth and thrown out onto the streets. She has nothing outwardly to commend herself to anybody. God describes passing that way and loving her and choosing to set his compassion upon her. This is one of the most amazing descriptions in the Bible, I think. Listen to how God puts it, his love for his people. Later, I passed by, and when I looked at you and saw that you were old enough for love, I spread the corner of my garment over you. It's exactly what Boaz did for Ruth. I asked you to marry me, in effect, God says to his people. I asked to take you into the shadow of my wing, God says, and I covered your naked body. I gave you my solemn oath and entered into a covenant with you. You see how this is an ancient custom of proposal? I entered into a covenant with you, declares the sovereign Lord, and you became mine. Now, your brokenness is far greater than that of Ruth, but God's blessings are much better than those of Boaz. I expect on that night under the stars, Ruth's heart would have been racing as she asked Boaz to redeem her, to propose to her. And by all human appearances or expectations, we'd think Boaz would say, no. Why would I want to marry you? You're a Moabite after all. What do you have to offer me? But Boaz says, yes, for one simple reason, he loved her. He loved her. Today you might well be thinking, why in the world would God love a people like us? Why would he save us? Why would he redeem us? Well, it's not because of anything commendable in us. Everything in you might think there is no reason why he would accept you. But if you have the courage to ask, like Ruth had the courage to ask, that this person would enter into a covenant relationship, it would be your joy to discover that this God has loved you all along.